Hello, everybody. This is Denny Miller, and welcome to Indy 500 Yesteryear. And today with Speedway Insiders Paul Page.
Hi.
Bob Gates, and our special racing guest, Pastor Will Marotti. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Hello.
Bob Gates, you were doing your Lewis and Clark out through the West. You got one highlight that stands out. We really missed you and everything. Boy, Paul and I had to do it ourselves.
It was a great trip for anyone that hasn't been to the West, to Yellowstone, to the Tetons, or any of those areas. It's just hard to capture in a photograph what's really happening there, how beautiful it is. It's so expansive and so large. It's hard to capture anything like you should be able to. So it was just a great trip, seeing all that natural beauty.
Well, we did miss you and everything. We had a show on, but it was like a three-legged stool with one leg missing and everything.
Well, I'm glad to be back.
And I got to go to the great state of Indiana for a week. And one of my dearest friends, Jim Jamero, who started the Disney Channel, came with me. He never had been to Indiana. He's a huge Penn State donor. And Pastor, I really screwed up. I should have spoken with you a week earlier so you could have had a divine intervention type prayer for my boilers to kick.
I know it didn't quite go as well.
Rear end. I had to hear all about, Penn State, but
well, I only missed you by one day, Denny. I left it the day before you got there.
So if fate has it that they play in the Big Ten championship game, Penn State and Purdue, a week before, I'm going to be having the prayers for the alternate outcome of that game. And another highlight of that time, and I do want to thank a couple of people, Mike Leschmuth for his tour of Jim through that magnificent restoration that they do. Al and Norman Unser took Jim through their facility. Ray Skillman let us come down and see his fantastic thing, and got to ride the merry-go-round and being the guest of Gary and Kim Irvin. And I think the concluding thing that was so much fun was at Iron Skillet with you, Paul, and Sally and Gary and Kim. It was a fun evening. We got off on a variety of subjects.
Yeah, we did.
Those poor bus boys, they almost fell asleep on the bench waiting for us.
They were giving you the eye and wondering when you were going to shut up.
No,
it had closed like 2 hours earlier.
But that was just a fun evening, and Jim's comment was amazed how much similarity the two of you have in your broadcasting backgrounds and everything, and how your interest in Broadway plays, which he produces as well. So it was a fun trip, and Long's Bakery still was open and all that neat stuff. The only thing bad, Bob, we really missed you there, though. There was Paul and Sally, Gary and Kim, Jim and I, and particularly missed you when they presented the check. We could have really had Bob Gates there.
Yeah.
When did that happen? I must have been in the restroom or something.
I because he didn't show up. Maybe he knew that we were going to tell the owner to give it to him or something. But this is going to be a fun show. Pastor, there's a lot of, I guess, announcements that you are going to be able to tell us. Typically what we do on our shows, if you followed them, by the way, I don't know how well you may have known him, but this show is dedicated to our dear friend, Robin Miller.
I wondered when you were going to get to that. I was getting ready to intervene, but you got it.
And it had not been for Robin, probably this would not be on today, and we really miss him. And sometimes we poke some fun at Robin Miller, but he is beyond a legacy at Indy, and I guess maybe we should start championing him being a member of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Hall of Fame to get on that soapbox.
As long as you're there and mentioning that, yesterday was also Bob Jenkins' birthday, who,
Mhm.
Oh,
passed
was
away a
it?
couple of years ago.
Is
And,
Bob in the Hall of Fame?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
good.
Yes, he is. And he, in his hometown in Indiana, Liberty, Indiana, they have now created a mural on one of the buildings down there of Bob with the control tower, the pagoda and everything in the background. It's really, really quite well done and a beautiful tribute to a wonderful man.
No, definitely. Well, what we like to do, Pastor, is kind of hit on a few general type topics, then we'll lead into you as the feature of our show.
Oh, boy.
First thing I want to do is wish our dear friend Susie Bettenhausen a happy 39th birthday today. Her life seems to be getting happier and happier with the meeting of another dear friend, Pat Beckley. So happy birthday, Susie. And Merle indicated that he would make an appearance on our show in the near future to talk about his dad, with his Tony Bettenhausen's birthday being September the 12th. But the big thing I think that's almost seismic is it's probably a foregone conclusion that Colton Herta is going to be gone. And now there seems to be an interest in Red Bull to get involved. And part of the deal is that Andretti releases him from the Indy Car contract, and that McLaren will release him for at least a couple of years from their test program and beyond. What's your take on that, Bob? You see this as
Well, he's got to get enough points, or however they work that out for his competition license. That might stand in his way, but Michael Andretti has already said if he had an opportunity to go race Formula One, he would not hold him to his contract. So that shouldn't be a problem. I hate to see Colton go if he goes, because he's a great young star and an American, and we need more young guys like him in IndyCar racing. At the same time, it's a great opportunity for him. And if he goes, I just hope he can get with a team that he can do well with. And that's always a challenge for any driver going to Formula One.
You know, remember when Michael went to Formula One and his outcome was not that successful or pleasant for him, Paul, those days? And you see anything similar, or will this be different these days?
Well, I hope it'll be different. To begin with, when Michael went, I'm not sure how much his head was really into that game. Part of that being just because he kept coming back and forth to the States. And Formula One, you do have to dedicate yourself up and really be involved in it and know what everybody else is doing. And I don't think that helped Michael, but it was what he wanted to do. Colton, I'm going to be a little disappointed him going to Formula One before he gets his Indy 500 win. But if he goes to Formula One, the time and age and skills are right, and maybe he can get his world championship next year or the year after that, and then come back to race the Indy 500 and win that. How's that for an idea?
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I think Colton would be one to come back because I think he'd very much love to win the Indianapolis 500.
Yeah. So the big question becomes, if Colton leaves, who's going to get in that seat?
Yes, and that's what we're going to talk about as well. This really begins musical chairs. Will and I were talking about this, that when you look at Andretti race team 2 years ago, they had James Hinchcliffe, Colton Herta, Alexander Rossi, Ryan Hunter-Reay, and Marco Andretti. And that's just an incredible brand of drivers for any corporate sponsor to be associated with or co-associated with. You're going to have, even though he could very well be a superstar, Kyle Kirkwood is not going to be Alexander Rossi. Certainly DeFrancesco is not Ryan Hunter-Reay.
Mm.
I think that the Andretti brand is weakened, so they're going to have to get someone, I think, strong. And Malukas certainly comes to the forefront. I see him more with Ganassi if there's a move than Andretti. What do you say? How do you see the tea leaves reading on that, Paul?
Yeah, I don't see a Malukas, excuse me, move. And I'm not really sure. You got to think kind of outside what IndyCar might be right now. I mean, this is far-fetched, but you got Ricardo leaving McLaren, and with no chance of being in Formula One, maybe he comes to the States and tries to get in one of those seats. There are several others like that. The interesting thing with Colton for me, though, is getting his super license. I know there have been a bunch of attempts to try and do that, including contact with one of the top SCCA Pro Series, asking if he could come race that series. And the series was pretty much for it, though I'm not sure if I'm in a series that I'm doing halfway well in and Colton comes along, how I'm going to feel. But the end result of all that being that the FIA refused that. So
really, my opinion on that's absolutely crazy with as good as he is. Like telling Grosjean or Ericsson to come over here, you got to have so many points or something like that. A great race car driver is a great race car driver. You didn't have that.
Apparently, you've never hung out with any of the Formula One types.
Well, no,
they're very special.
Well, yeah, but it didn't used to be that way with Clark and Stewart and Hill in those days. And they did Mario have a need to have a super license to come?
I have no idea what the licenses were there.
But the point being, Mario Andretti was that great of a race car driver, and Colton Herta is almost in that league, and that there should be exceptions to who they have. Maybe that's our hope. Maybe he doesn't get his super license and he stays in IndyCar.
I think with all this happening, touching on a subject Paul mentioned, is that, who's going to, and so did you, Denny, but who's going to fill that seat, and how's that going to shake up every other team in IndyCar racing?
All right. How's it going to happen, Bob?
That's a good question. There's a lot of scenarios there.
You eat at Charlie Brown's about every day. What are they saying?
I haven't heard any good rumors. And part of what's going to shape this is how this Ganassi Palou situation shakes down. Hopefully that will happen fairly quickly. Because if Ganassi keeps Palou, he wouldn't, that would free up Malukas. If we think Malukas and Ganassi are interested in teaming up, Malukas might go to Andretti. The same time, Kirkwood coming on board, nobody knew Rossi didn't know too much about IndyCar racing his first year. And he came on very, very quickly. So Kirkwood could do the same thing. And Kirkwood has got a year in IndyCar behind him now. And not trying to disparage AJ Foyt Racing, they're improving, but he's done some pretty good runs with some very challenging equipment. Let me put it that way. So
Bob,
there's hope there, I think.
Bob, my sense is with the Palou thing is it's coming near its conclusion, and it's kind of sounding like Andretti is going to get a pot full of money, and Ganassi is going to get a pot full of money, and then Palou can leave. That's it. But that's I'm pulling that out of the air here. So
with Rossi and O'Ward and Palou, that almost is the Andretti, Al Unser, Joe Leonard super team for McLaren next year.
It's certainly making things interesting, that's for sure. Just as an aside, as you mentioned, I've been gone into the great wilderness, many times not even having Wi-Fi accessibility. But I did hear your friend Jack Arute, Paul, and Tony Kanaan talking over the weekend.
Uh-huh.
And they were suggesting that maybe IndyCar needs something like Formula One, which is a board that oversees all the driver contracts. So we don't have this type of mess that we have going on right now in IndyCar. So I thought it was an interesting discussion.
It's not a bad idea. I just, I'm not sure when I say names like, Ganassi, Andretti, Penske, that's going to work quite that way.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Well, you follow F1 a lot, Paul. That's happening on the McLaren side in Formula One too, with that young kid named Oscar. I'm not sure I pronounce his last name.
Yeah.
But they want him apparently heavily as well. So
yeah, again, that's with Ricardo going out and Landis doing so well, and I'm happy to report he is part of my fantasy Formula One team, so I'm good there. But that might go smoother there than perhaps it would here.
I like the fact that Norris wanted to run those video game versions of the 500 and expressed an interest in coming. Now, Will, we're throwing all these names out, so if you're searching for a driver, that might
well,
be.
there's plenty. There's never a shortage of drivers. There's always a shortage of seats, and that's part of the concern is that we got some really quality drivers coming out of the light series, and they get topped out, and then there's nowhere for them to go. They can go to IMSA, of course, but I think we need more teams in IndyCar. I think we need more teams. We need more available seats to be able to take some of these really talented drivers that are coming up through the ladder series and then stalling out. So I'd love to see that. But I think it's interesting when you talk about Colton and Alex Palou and Pato, they all three want to go to Formula One. Mm-hmm. So that would open 3 IndyCar seats up. Maybe that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, that's true.
But it is. You hate to see that'd be like losing a
lot of talent,
an Unser and a John Koch in those days. And I remember if you bring in a third engine company, like Chevrolet was always running last, even with Sam Hornish as good as he was when they were competing, and then how bad the Lotus ran. It's the almost equalness with Honda and Chevy that makes it special, and you may lose that third engine company's ability to compete. So Dale Coyne, in a way, is kind of like the Kansas City Athletics years ago when the Yankees would steal all their talented people. If all that musical chairs happens, where do you see does Dale go outside and gets another Malukas or another Grosjean, and then suddenly they do well and they poach it from him again, or do you see someone like Rosenquist going to the Coyne, or will they bring back Sebastian Bourdais, which would be neat to see Sebastian back in the IndyCar? You have a feel on what Dale might do, Paul?
No, but I say that because that man is the prophet now. I mean, he has really pulled some great drivers that no one else ever considered. Right. And I'm expecting if it's needed, he'll do that again. Yep. The key in there, though, I think is also Rosenquist. Where's that all going to finally come out? What's going to be his relationship with his current team? And there's still, as you say, it's a silly season. There are a lot of balls in the air.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've never really seen anything like it. And we've had some crazy, silly seasons in the past, but I don't think anything quite like this, especially, involving some top teams.
Mm-hmm. This is, and like I said on the other show, as talented as Malukas is, I'm sure Penske might be considering, do we go a fourth team again? That's not been mentioned. I know you don't think so, Paul, but to pass up someone that's almost a younger version of Scott McLaughlin. and can he resist? How's that for a segue into qualifying and the race at Portland?
Well done.
But anyway, Portland is one of the shorter of the road courses, and its notorious first turn was very tame this time. I guess congratulations all the Indy Car drivers for using their heads a little better this time. Nothing happened.
Might congratulate the race director as well, because they actually moved the starting point of the race back some, and that, I think that helped.
It was a good
going
move
into turn one. That helped out a lot. So it proves IndyCar officials listen to the drivers and take a look at what's happening, and really they're thinking about the fans as well. You don't want to see your favorite driver wiped out in the first lap, the first turn of the first lap. Kind of ruins the whole race for you if you're a fan. So I'm glad to see that they're looking at some of those things as well. And I've already heard talk about them changing the form or the track some at Nashville next year again for the same reason.
Yeah.
So that's good to see that the race officials are paying attention, not only to the drivers, but to the fans.
I don't have a lot to really support this because I haven't talked to many of the drivers, and I'm not so sure that the drivers really enjoyed that start. Yeah, they did something. I think it was more a public relations move than anything else to get away from that constant turn one problem. Although that sold a few newspapers, we'll say that about it. To my way of thinking, they started them way too far into the corner. And there were a lot of guys still in a turning moment when they would have to apply power. And again, to my way of thinking, that created a single file race. And that was not going to be an exciting race for the longest time. Eventually it became one, but I think that's still something they need to examine a little more and figure out how to do it. And I'm not sure the answer. I do have one answer, actually. Let the field run up all the way to the starter and then green flag them like we used to do. I think the same thing about the Indy 500, as a matter of fact. Rather than this, you can start over here at this marker in turn 4, bring everybody right to 100 yards or so of the line and then drop the green flag. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I agree. Don't race until the green flag actually drops at the start finish line.
Yeah, they did a pretty good job of getting away from those real ragged cars or almost a half mile behind type of starts that had been the case in the past. It looks better visually with the field somewhat bunched. I don't know as a car owner, Will, if you would really like it all that bunch at a start, but
Will, what do you think?
Well, as a car owner, I'm more concerned about the sponsors, right? So, you look at Portland 2 years in a row. I mean, just dumb carnage, right? So if I'm working hard to get a sponsor and my car gets wiped out in the first turn, I had that happen in 2017. We switched the sponsor we brought over to James Hinchcliffe's car, and it was at the last run at Sonoma. And in lap 1, James spun out and didn't come back in. And here's my sponsor standing there, and his wife and his CFO and his wife, and the car's out after the first lap. So I mean, from a commercial standpoint, gosh, it's tough when you're really banking on these guys having a good race, getting good TV exposure, and we got great contract with NBC. So yeah, I'm very concerned about these first lap demo derbies. I hate to see it happen, although I know it's great TV and I know it sells and I know it's exciting. And as a fan, it's great, but there's just so much in play there when you lose out in the first lap or second lap with these kind of things. So I'm very concerned about it.
Well, Roger Penske certainly appeared to know what he was doing when he hired McLaughlin. He sits on the pole. Newgarden was second, but he had to start back because was that an engine
change
again?
Engine change.
Bo Power started third, moved up to the outside of the front row. The guy that can still amazes me is Christian Lundgaard. Ray Allcar started fourth. Alex Palou 5th, and Pato Award 6th. Rosenquist just barely missed getting it. Shows how tight it is. But he proved that wasn't a fluke. He led 104 of 120 laps and just totally dominated that race. It created a very interesting point battle toward the end. You have Will Power at first with 523. Joseph Newgarden and Scott Dixon are both tied for second at 503. Newgarden has the advantage having the tiebreaker with the most wins. Ericsson has allowed his comfortable lead to slip. He's now fourth at 484 points, and the last person with this win put him within an outside chance of getting it done. McLaughlin has now 482 points going into the final race at Laguna Seca this coming weekend. So another thing I want to talk about, I think, is how better Ray Hall as a team has rebounded in the race with Graham Ray Hall finishing 5th, and really early stages, Lundgaard looked like he could challenge for the win. You want to tell about that incident? Did either one of you get to see that where he hits the signage thing and it drags it around the track?
Yeah, I wondered why I just didn't stop the car, get out and pull it off. Oh, you got to strap him back in, don't you? Yeah, that was, I thought it was interesting because TV folks were all talking about it in the practice shows. What a good job they've done in creating a new indicator barrier down there and having bags of water in it instead of sand to weight it down and everything. But no one could ever have guessed that you'd really pick that sign up and drive it around to the track. That was special. I don't think he enjoyed it.
They could have, if they knew he was going to do that, they could have sold a sponsor's name right well on that. You could add to that to your sponsorship presentation. But Ray Hall, hats off to that team, and really the young Dane rookie is outperforming the boss, but which leads to how tight around the collar you think it's getting for Jack Harvey. I know he has a second year, but
I like one thing that Graham Rahal said. I guess must have been in a post-race interview. He said, "We've struggled all year," and I'm paraphrasing here, "but I haven't forgot how to do this, nor has Jack Harvey."
Right.
So he did make a point to mention Jack Harvey because previous years Jack's had some very good runs. So it's just so competitive right now in Indy Car racing. It just takes, as you know, just a few hundreds, thousands of a second determines your qualifying position. Whether you're in the top 6 or back in the middle of the field. Same way with race day.
And then on finishing 9th was Colin Yaya again as well.
Yeah.
So he in the Juncos car. So he is another one of these young stars of the making.
Yeah, just so competitive, anymore that used to be if you finished in the top 10, well, that was always a milestone event, I suppose. But the top 3 was the thing. Right now, I mean, it's a great accomplishment to finish in the top 10.
You see Ilott having a teammate next year, Paul? Ricardo, that team?
I don't know. I really can't answer that one. I'm not sure what the whole situation with him and the team is right now. I just know that I like him. I think he represents himself so well, and it speaks very well for the sport. And I think he's a very skilled driver who, another season or so, he will really be someone to watch.
Right.
So, well, it all comes down to next weekend. So, which will be certainly what we're talking about. But now we're going to segue to our featured guest, Pastor Will Marotti. That's a kind of unusual combination. Years ago, not that many people would, I'd say, really pastor-like in their ways of life when they would come to the Speedway. How did you get first of all, involved in your faith and your church and everything, Will?
Well, I was raised in a different stream of the faith and never really took root. By the time I was in my early 20s, I had become a committed agnostic, and but my life was not heading in the right direction, and I knew I needed a major change. So I had gone to a pagan festival called Spring Break in Fort Lauderdale, and it was a life-changing time for me. Just meeting some people and really caused me to think and take a step back. And so I made a decision at that point in time. I was going to head a different direction in life, and been the right direction, been the right course all these years later. So I had no interest in the ministry. I wanted to race cars. That was the only thing I wanted to do, and did that for a few years till I recognized you needed more money than I could do or my family could develop. So, I was a kid. I didn't understand sponsors or anything like that. And over time, reluctantly, I was a reluctant participant, but people kept telling me, "Oh, you should go into ministry." I was heavily involved in the church, and I went to the senior pastor at one point. I'd already gone to school for theology, and I went to the pastor and I said, "Hey, I think I'm gonna leave my job and go back to school and get in the ministry." And he started laughing at me, and I said, "What's so funny?" He said, "Well, everybody else around here has known you're supposed to be in the ministry. We were just waiting for the idea to catch up to you." And so that was kind of the impetus about it. And so 23 years ago, my wife and I decided to embark. We were comfortably in another setting as an associate pastor, but felt the call to come back to my hometown and start a church. And we did, and started with 3 people in our living room. And it has since, we're now in our 4th location. It's a beautiful campus in Wallingford. We've got a school and a daycare, and we just finished our 10th year of summer camp, and it's been fabulous. But long before I was a pastor, and long before I married my wife, and long before I was a father, and long before anything, I was an Indy 500 fan. And so I keep telling my wife, I said, "Honey, there's another woman in my life. She's the Indianapolis Motor Speedway," and I got to give her credit. She's been very patient with me. And just, a super fan, been a super fan for years and years and years. And, my first race was 69. So I was a radio fanatic. And I happened on this channel that broadcasted the Red Sox games up here. And it's actually the channel that I now broadcast on every day.
Right.
And I sound like this race. I'm like, what is that? I just fell in love with racing at that point, just a little kid. And the greatest spectacle in racing. What is this? And in fact, it wasn't even on a Saturday, Sunday. It was a Friday in 1969. And listened to it, and Mario won, and that was it for me. And then went out in 82 for my first in-person race to see Mario, and he gets bumped out by Kevin Kogan. And it just was so well. What a great baptism to the Indianapolis 500. John Cock and Mears shooting it out at the end. It was fantastic. And I just got bit. They got all of me. I just was helplessly addicted. And, it's funny, Paul, I know for you, 77 was a pivotal year. It's probably the best historic year in the history of the 500. You had AJ, and you have Tom Sneva and Janet Guthrie. Of course, we lost Mr. Holman in 77. We lost Sid Collins in 77. But the funny thing about it, our first year, we teamed up with Schmidt Peterson. And in 2016, and our car was number 77 with Oriol Servia driving, and we did really well. And so if we get back into this thing regularly, I'm gonna do all I can to get that number away from Unco so we can run 77 with the car. But it's such a great history. But yeah, it's just been a great life. But I just have always loved Indy, Indy Car. Like I said, off camera, Bob, I don't care about Formula One. I'm sorry, Paul. I don't care about NASCAR. I'll watch it. I like it. I'm not against it, but my passion, my love is Indianapolis. And I just love everything about it. And, so we've been trying to get in on a regular basis in 16, and we accomplished that, and then we came back with a 4-race package in 17 with talking about Bill Vukovich, the Mad Russian. We called Mikhail Aloshin the Mad Russian. He was our Mad Russian, and had a great time there. And then we couldn't get it over in 18 or 19, and came back and had a great sponsor in 2020, a 4-race deal. It was all hospitality. And of course, there was no hospitality in 2020. So, fortunately, they didn't ask for the check back, which was nice. And we had a great run. With Santino and Vassar Sullivan. And, so we're excited. We're excited. No matter what, if it never goes any farther than this, in 2016, my family name, and I have to say thank you to Sam Schmidt, my family name was on the pit wall. And I cried like a baby that day.
Sure.
I had my dad there. Mom had already passed. But to see our family name on the pit wall at Indianapolis Motor Speedway was it was special. It was special.
And you were in the hunt to win that race too.
We were, with 4 laps to go, we were in 4th place, and we were on the same fuel problem everybody else with. And I won't go into details, but I wanted to leave Oriole out there and roll the dice, but I got outvoted. What's a pastor know? But I mean, it could have been us. It could have been us rolling across the finish line on fumes, out of gas.
Yeah.
We gritted up next to Rossi. Oriole qualified in the inside of that row, and so it was funny because. We were there, and Alexander Rossi was there. I was talking to Brian Herta about it, and sure enough, we blew the pit stop at the end. We finished 12th, but I mean that's not a bad first outing. It was pretty exciting.
When you guys were running 4th that late in the race, where was Rossi?
Rossi was either 1st or 2nd. I think he was still up front, and
so he circulated around to take the lead that late.
He was in a good position, but I mean, it was Brian that came up with that, clutch and gas. And, I mean, you can't take it away. That was a brilliant strategy. And, but to even be in 4th place with 4 laps to go, I felt like we had won. It was that important for our first time out. But yeah, it was amazing, and it was great to partner with Schmidt Peterson that first year. They were very good, and Sam was extremely generous with us, and it was a great way to break in for sure. So, sorry I got all emotional there.
But like I was with Al Unser Jr. over the weekend, that famous line of his, "You just don't know what Indy means."
Yeah.
Will kind of tells what Indy's all about. What's that quote you oftentimes tell sponsors too?
So I've been saying this for a long time, and you'll all relate to this. For people who get it, who get Indy, no explanation is necessary. And for people who don't get Indy, no explanation is possible. You can't really explain the passion that we share. I mean, all of us, we walk onto the track, whether it's back home again in Indiana or there, our hearts are pounding. We got goosebumps. We used to get that way when they released balloons. I won't go there. I know that's
we will.
So, I mean, honestly, when I walked in there in '82, I mean, the first time I walked into the facility, the sky was never bluer, the grass was never greener. I thought I was in heaven. It was unbelievable. And to this day, I go out there on that track and I feel like a little kid. It takes me back to my childhood and the greatest spectacle in racing. And I mean, it's just, it's the greatest place in the world. But if you don't get it, if you haven't experienced that, so I say everybody, man, it should be a bucket list. If you've never gone to the 500, even if you're not a racing fan, you need to go to the 500 because it's such a phenomenal experience. And, I'm preaching to the choir here, but.
There's maybe I can offer a second line to your wonderful little quote there and say that if you don't like Indy, you haven't been there. I don't know anybody who comes here that doesn't come back.
Yeah, I think you're right, Paul. Yeah.
What a great story.
I'm writing that down as a matter of fact.
Wait a minute, Bob, do we get money from you? You're a writer. I'm a
royalties.
I don't get anything.
I'll share royalties if I get anything off of it. But yeah. So, and that's kind of the genesis of what we're doing now with the Spirit of Speedway. You guys all know this. Back in the day, before commercial sponsorship, the proliferation of commercial sponsorship, it was fairly common to name cars after communities. We had cars named after Terre Haute, Lebanon, Dayton, Glendale, California, because they're Curtis Craft chassis. There's a car sitting in the Florida Museum right now in Daytona Beach. Daytona Beach had 2 cars entered under its name. And so when we did the search, we found out that in the entire history of the Indianapolis 500, there's never been a car entered with the name Speedway on it for the home of the Speedway. We had in 74, I think Spike Gelhausen drove the Spirit of Indiana. That's about the closest thing to it. And so we came up with this concept, the Spirit of Speedway. And I'll tell you, people loved the idea. We took it to the town council. They thought it was a great idea. We talked about it around town. And, but it's a big deal. It's hard. You guys know it's hard to get into this thing. Yeah. You know, I'm not crying poverty. You know, we've done very well in life, but I don't have 100 car dealerships or 10,000 trucks. You know, I'm just a regular guy. I'm just a fan. So we have to count on creativity and passion and quite frankly, you know, the generosity of sponsors that see a business opportunity here to jump in. And so we started for the first time ever with this, we started a crowdfund. Now, crowdfunding is not new in Indy, certainly. But this is so much different because this is an SEC regulated crowdfund. And we got into it too late, but we finished it on May 31st. We closed it. And to our surprise, we were told it was the most successful crowdfund in IndyCar history. So we heard that. We said, let's go for round two. A lot of companies do round one as seed money and round two. And so we're within a day or two of this taping, we'll be launching round two of the crowdfund. And we learned a lot. On round one, learned a lot of what not to do. We figured out better how to promote it. And so what we're actually doing, and we've submitted the paperwork to SEC, all the financials, all the forms are done. We're actually selling stock in the car. So we're hoping that this could be the first fan-owned entry for the Indianapolis 500. And we had investors from the first round, and they all stayed with us into this year. We had a great month of May. We went to the Grand Prix. We were all there for qualifying. We're there for the 500. We came back for Brickyard. We're up in the Holman Terrace Club. I've never been up there before. I mean, I've been in other suites, but that Terrace Holman Club, holy cow, is that wonderful. Beautiful. And the bathrooms are great. I love the bathrooms. But I mean, you got the best seats in town. I mean, the great viewing from up there. So, you know, that's our goal. And of course, we're going to have to get the help of corporate sponsorships. And we're working on, Denny, I told you this the other day, we're talking to two corporate sponsors right now. Very excited in what we're doing. We're all under NDA. I can't really speak about it right now. We're also talking to two drivers. I can't tell you who they are, but they both have raced at the 500 with some modicum of success. And so we're hoping soon to be able to put this package together for at least the 500, but we're going to shoot for the stars, and we're going to try to get a whole season developed out of this. I do think we need more teams in the sport. I think we need those extra seats for the great drivers that are out there. I hate to see them top out at lights and then not have a place to go. And so that's going to be our goal.
Well, Will, what'd you think of this past May, which I thought was beyond ridiculous? That they couldn't even fill the field for the 33rd car, and it took sleight of hand magic to get Justin Wilson.
Yeah. Well, great for Justin Wilson. I mean, everybody loves Justin, you know, that's a great thing. But I mean, if you remember back in March of earlier this year, they were talking 36, 37 cars. We were talking legitimate bumping, which we all love. I don't know that I would as a sponsor, but we all love bumping, right? And then to have to get to the 11th hour and have 32 cars. I mean, we were trying like crazy to get in. We couldn't pull it off. But you know, thank God.
How close did you come? How close did you come to having that 33rd entry? Are you able to share that?
We found out in December. We were at PRI, and we found out Honda was already not going to supply any more engines. I got a call from someone who said, you better get a hold of Chevrolet right now. So I talked with Rob Buckner about it. And he said, listen, he said, not to hurt your feelings, but a brand new team as a one-off is not attracted to us. At the time, they thought that was the last year. Remember, for the engine platform, they extended it out. But at the time, they thought that was the last year for the platform. They said, we don't want a bunch of extra parts kicking around. We don't have to dedicate more personnel. So, you know, maybe we can talk to you in 23, but the engine is not available for you for 22. And at that point we said, all right, well, you know, we had a meeting with our investors. Everybody met in Speedway, and, you know, and we just explained to them what had happened and told them if they wanted to stay with us, we'd honor their investment all the way into 23. They'd still get the same benefits. So they really got a twofer. to the one, every single investor said they wanted to stay with us. And so, we had a great time together. It was a great team building experience. And Bob, you went to our team party out at, and Denny out at Vintage Indy. We
Right.
thought we had 66 people showing up. We had over 100. Thank God I got to the caterer. Al Jr. was very generous with his time, was our guest speaker. And we had 3 or 4 Indy Car drivers there. And it was a great night. So it was disappointing that we didn't make the race, but it was very encouraging that so many good other first steps were made. And so I think we're more encouraged now going into next season and launching the second round of the crowdfund.
Well, I hope one of the things Roger Penske will able to use his influence is that if engines are needed, whether it would take 40 entrants or 45 entrants or whatever, that a blend of Chevy and Hondas are available, other than like what you were saying, you can't get an engine.
Well, we understood. I mean,
sport.
We just weren't an attractive option, I mean,
Well, but attractive options or not, that's what kind of makes Indy. If you look over the history of it, you'll see Ted Prapus's and them making it at the 11th hour, and that's kind of special. And we're also talking, if they bring a third engine manufacturer, you run that risk of, like Chevrolet was when Sam Hornish was driving it, or when the Lotus was there, they're just hopelessly not in the same league as Chevy and Honda. So it's got to be strong. But the idea, if they could have as many engine deals as there is customers, I think would be helpful for the one-off people, in fact.
Well, it would be. And I mean, it would be good for the sport. I think bumping is exciting. Nobody wants to be the, Fernando Alonso getting bumped out. But I think, again, it's good for the sport. It's good for the fans. I'd like to see, 82, my first 500, I think there were 54 entries for the 82 5. There were 30 American drivers and 3 international entrants. So, it's a much different world. It's a much different sport back then. And I have no problem with the internet. In fact, I can't say that about the drivers we're talking to. I think there's some great talent out there, people that deserve. Denny, we talked about the other day. I think Oliver Askew is a great driver. I'd like to see him get back in. I think Spencer Pigot, we haven't seen the full potential of Spencer Pigot. I don't think we've seen the full potential of Ed Jones. I don't think we've seen the full potential. There's so many good drivers out there, and there's a couple of Formula 2 guys in Europe that apparently want to come over. So there's no shortage of drivers. It's shortage of seats. That's the problem. But could I say this too? Could I just say this too? Our website we'll have it back up with the new crowdfund. The website for that is spiritofspeedway.com. Very simple, spiritofspeedway.com. And you can either check out there's videos there that we posted about the investment. There's the investment guide, all the financial reports and stuff are there. So you can get a full picture of that. The way it works is the minimum investment is $10,000, and you get 1% of the car at $10,000, and you get 1% of the corresponding purse that's generated. So that's never been done before. A car's never been sold out. The stocks have never been sold, and no one ever opens up the purse. So that's a first, 2 firsts. But also, if you go on the website, you can sign up for our newsletter to get all of our emails, right? So you just put your name and your email. But for right now, if people see this and the website's not open when they see this, if you'll just type in the word spirit and send it to 844-403-2259. That's spirit to 844-403-2259. You can text into our email list as well. And we love to share the news about what's going on. So.
Well, Will, does an altar call help at all as far as getting added funding for your
I can't tell you how much time we prayed about it. I think it could help. Maybe we could do something for Bob. I don't know. But I'll tell you what, honestly, if we get in and be able to stay in, I'll be doing a Carl Haas. I'll be kneeling at the nose and praying every race, thanking God. I don't know if I'll do the cigars, but I'll be praying for sure. That's
Well, you know, I wrote the book on Eddie Sachs, and Sachs is
Yeah.
always good at getting down on his knees and genuflecting and making the sign of the cross. One of the more
Well-
famous ones when Johnny Thompson was about ready to go out and knock him off the pole, and of course the camera catches Sachs doing that. That has worked before, so that's an alternate strategy.
Well, I told that story. The guy was helping us with sponsor. He's pretty prolific. He worked for Newman Haas, and he's quite a character in his own right. And he tried for a year, convinced me to, I'm a Protestant, so I don't wear a collar, right? And he tried for a year, just put the collar on. You'll get more publicity if you have the collar on. People, and I couldn't shake it, right? So he offered to buy it, and everybody. No, I'm not gonna go that way, but he thought it was a good idea.
Well, our dear friend Father Glenn, known as the priest in the pits, would always wear his collar.
Yeah, sure. If I was a Catholic priest, I'd wear it proudly. I'd have no problem doing that.
Maybe a Monsignor hat would work.
Good. Maybe we'll break a hat out. I don't know.
You look probably
that's-
good in red, wouldn't you there, Will?
Well, red's a good color for me, but and the other thing I've talked about, I don't, there's no definite plan here, but I mean, at some point, we're going to be, my plan is to, step away from day-to-day ministry here, turn it over to the young guy, pass the baton, so to speak. And we've talked about maybe starting a small church right in Speedway. We've got good experience starting churches, and I think a Speedway church would be a lot of fun. A church, by racers, for racers kind of a thing. And so we actually have talked to some folks in Speedway about that. And I don't want it to be as big as, what we have here. This is a massive undertaking, but I would love to have a small congregation of folks that love racing. And, after the service, we could have some coffee and talk about Indy, it'd be fun. So we'll see what happens.
And Long's Donuts too.
And you can't forget Long's Donuts. In fact,
Will, that is
Oh,
such a
I
great.
still have to pay for them as much as I promote them and everything.
yeah, well, I can see that.
You're not a police officer. That's your problem.
Yes. So our dear friend Mike Lashmuth and you are working on something.
Yeah.
You want to share that with us too?
Yeah. So back in May at our team party, Mike had an idea. When Dan Gurney died, there was a lot of stuff, the estate had hold of, and Mike was able to obtain a whole extra set. Mike has a partner, and they own one of the 72 Gurney Eagles, number 6. It's in the Olsenite livery. And Mike came with this idea. He said, your Spirit of Speedway is so retro, and everything about it looks back at a vintage era. He said, why don't we take the extra body parts and put it in a Spirit of Speedway livery? So I thought that was a wild idea. So I just got an email from Mike's partner Ted yesterday. So we're planning on painting the extra body panels. We've already designed a livery Spirit of Speedway, and we're going to have it at PRI. And it's going to be a great promotional opportunity for us. And Mike was Mike's idea. He's all for the idea. We're gonna debut it at PRI, and I think we're also going to put it in the Indianapolis Boat Sport and Travel Show. It's a big show out in at the fairgrounds, and it runs over 2 weekends. It'll be a great opportunity for us to build a Spirit of Speedway brand, and also potentially find some investors for the car.
As you land at Indianapolis Airport, you go through, and there's 1 or 2 past Indy cars there. Would that be something that you might want to put your car there?
If we could pull it off. I mean, those are always museum cars. Right now, they got a turbine car, 68 turbine car there, and Mario's, I think, 66 Dean Van Line's car. If they'd let us, I mean, yeah, it'd be wonderful. We'd love to do that. It'd be so cool. But we've got a lot of experience from the first round, and I think the second round is going to be fun. And if we get all these, it's such a complicated chess game, putting all these pieces together. If we're able to do that, though, I think we're gonna do well, and I'm excited about it. And I hope that we can make a long-term stand and be part of the Indy Car paddock for many years.
Well, we're going to let both Bob and Paul ask you a question or two. So you're on the hot seat now.
Okay.
We'll start with you, Bob.
Well, my question, maybe you already answered, is about the engine program for next year. You do have an engine program for 2023?
Chevrolet will work with us on an engine. Honda's probably going to be full again, but we are confident that Chevrolet will have a spot for us.
Okay, and you've spoke on that very well about how that's a big challenge now for new teams to be a part of the engine program. So, okay, that's great news.
And Paul?
Yeah, it's such a great idea. If this model works, that would be great for a bunch of other people trying to come into sport and trying to be successful. Yeah. I think it's a wonderful idea. Where do you figure your stock starts at, ends up at?
Well, you've got to come up with an initial valuation, and it's pretty much a pro forma that you're right. Where you're saying this is what we think it's worth. Certainly at this point, that value is going to increase exponentially with bringing sponsors in and bringing, the assets of the team in. So it's kind of it is very much like, Paul, for years, people have been pulling in investor clubs and buying racehorses, and they'll run the horse and maybe they'll break even. Maybe the horse will, win the Triple Crown and they'll do fabulously well. This really is more of, and for people that invest with us, this is more, and almost to the one, they'll say this, it's not so much about the return on investment. Yeah, they'd like to do well, but it's really having a chance to be more involved in the team, getting a chance to get kind of behind the curtain a little bit more than you normally would. It's a very much a supercharged fan experience in a lot of ways. Yeah, and so we've built a great team right now. It's going to get bigger with this next round. But I read an article in Forbes, and what gave me this idea, I read an article in Forbes, and they said, years ago, crowdfunding was looked down on as a way to raise capital. But now a lot of new startups are going to crowdfunding first. And you have all these companies that are now investment companies that are monitoring this and providing the wherewithal for it. It's not looked down at anymore. Now it's looked at as a real viable option for startups. So, like we like to lead the way, and I hope we are, and I hope it will be a model that'll be used by other, young drivers, young teams trying to come into the sport for sure.
Let me mention one thing, because you mentioned earlier that I was like a Formula One person. I watch and enjoy it, and this gives me a great segue, by the way. I did 8 years with the NHR. I love drag racing. Yeah. Basically, if you put a motor on it, I'm going to watch it race. Yeah. In fact, I was even in a lawnmower race out at the Speedway one year. So, but having said that, some people who are not into racing, that's called the Indianapolis Star. And I'm really, really miffed about this. There's been virtually no coverage of the Indy Car Championship. The NHRA had their biggest race, the U.S. Nationals, the Big Go, in town. Most of their teams are headquartered here in Indianapolis, and they got nothing the whole weekend. And that just, my subscription is long since gone. I don't know what to do now to try to convince them, but I can't. And the same thing exists in Florida, where they really ought to be all over IndyCar for St. Petersburg, and are not. And so those are some solutions I hope we come up with. But my solution is, hey, I hope they go out of business now.
Well, I do have to say, not to defend, and I don't disagree, Paul, at all what you're saying. I feel the same way. But I do have to say, the IndyCar reporter for the Star, Nathan Brown.
Oh, he does a good job. Yeah,
he was very generous with us and did an early article about the concept and very helpful. And we check in, hey, anything new developments, and so we'll be press releasing both the crowdfund as we get ready to launch, and I'm sure they'll be doing something on it for that. As they did in the early stages.
Yeah, and it's not Nathan; it's his editors, wherever they may live. Sure. Because I'm pretty sure they don't live here.
I mean, you guys have been around longer than I have, but hasn't there always been almost apart from Kirk Cavan, hasn't there always been kind of I don't want to say adversarial, but hasn't there always been a love-hate relationship with the track and the Star? It doesn't seem like they've ever really been, wholehearted supporters of what's going on.
You're right, but this is the broader picture. They're not covering anything, and that's what's bothering me. And again, the drag racing example is just perfect because here's a huge event, a very popular series. It has network television, and most of the shops, the giant, first class operations are right out on the west side of Indianapolis and Brownsburg, and they deserve a lot more than they're getting.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm done now. I know you're the pastor, so I'm going to get down off my pulpit.
Rant over.
No, we can all say amen to that, Paul.
Thank you.
Well, Will, did you have a good time on our show?
This was heavenly. Thank you so much. I feel honored to be with you guys.
Will you come back and tell us as this progresses along?
Love to, absolutely. Love to.
You won't let the Indianapolis Star scoop us then, right?
No. You guys have my heart now.
But we always like to do a wrap up, Will, where we give our final thoughts, and we're going to let you be a part of this too, because our final thoughts is who we anticipate or project who will be the new Indy Car champion. So Bob, we'll start with you, and who do you think will be the new champion in Indy Car?
Well, Will Power is going in with a 20-point lead, and the way Will Power has been qualifying and racing this season, that's going to be hard to overcome. But if anyone can do it, Scott Dixon has always been able, it seems, to pull the rabbit out of the hat, right down, going right down to the wire to win a championship. So I think if Will Power doesn't maintain it, Scott Dixon would be the one to come in and take it.
Okay, Paul, you're saying Scott Dixon. Okay, I know what this is going to be before I ask, Paul, at least I think. Your pick on who will be our next champion?
Well, knowing that Laguna Seca is one of my favorite racetracks in the world, and I took a couple driving schools there. It does things. There's always something a little different and special. It's kind of like Indy in that regard. Remember the past was Zanardi at the top of the corkscrew. Right. You get things like that out of Laguna. So any of those guys, I think, has a shot. The guy I think has the shot is Will Power. He's been steady. He's been good. He's 20 points in the lead. I think this is his year for another championship.
Will, is there any sort of inspiration from above that's telling you who you think will win?
I don't know if it's inspiration, but I'd be happy with any of the five. I think they're all worthy candidates. They've had a great season, but I think, I'd like to see two things happen. I'd like to see Will Power win the pole and break Mario's record. And then I would like to see Will pull it off. And Will only has to finish mathematically third or higher to win the champ, no matter what anybody else does. So I agree. I hate to be a rubber stamp here, but I think Will Power's in the driver's seat. Yeah.
And then I guess that leaves it to me. I think Joseph Newgarden is so talented. I think he will very much likely capture the pole and capture that, and will someone take Will Power out or whatever happens. Power has been known to slide backwards too this season. So of course Newgarden's had his problems. Before Indy, if anyone has said Marcus Ericsson would be the 2022 Indy 500 winner, you would have probably said, I don't think so, but I don't see him winning. The real storyline would be if Scott McLaughlin would somehow pull that off, and attrition would rob the others. But I see Newgarden as my pick. So we'll be back next week to find out. And there is a possible guest celebrity star coming on what will be Tony Bettenhausen's birthday. So I will leave it to see if something happens on that. So Pastor, thank you for coming. Keep us in your prayers. So with that, we say Godspeed and see you next week.